Hello, everybody. This is Jacob Sapochnik with enchantinglawyer.com. Welcome to our podcast. Today I have Mark Lack as our special guest. Mark is the founder and CEO of the Peak Performance Club. It's the world's #1 source for empowering great results in young adults. He's an entrepreneur. He's a coach. He's a young guy, and he's doing great things. Mark is also a former professional paintball player, and he's actually won the highest financial reward in paintball in history. And Mark, welcome to our show.
Great to be here. I appreciate you having me on your show.
Definitely. And Mark, I gave a little intro about you, but I always like to have our guests, tell their story more. You have the insight. And tell me a bit about your journey and how you came to be what you're doing right now.
Awesome. I'd be happy to. So it's sort of a long story because it's about 10 years, but I'll speed it up here for the audience. But it really started back when I wanted to get into paintball, oddly enough. And so I was around 14 years old and trying to convince my, loving and supportive parents to get me into this super expensive hobby called paintball. And so I painted them the picture of where I wanted to be. No, I'm not going to just take all your money for this expensive hobby. I actually want to do something with it. I want to become, one of the best in the world and play on this crazy professional team, the best team in the world called Dynasty, with these older guys that are awesome and they win everything. And parents are like, okay, yeah, all right, Mark, you're going to be the best in the world and do this. And so speeding a long story up, my parents supported me in this decision. And within about 3 to 4 years, I was on the best team in the world, being one of the best professional players in the world, traveling the world, doing everything and more that I, talked about doing at age 14. And then towards the end of my career in paintball, I really got into personal development. And one of the people that really started me on that journey was Tony Robbins. And so the mentality that my dad instilled in me was, if you want to be the best, you have. And so I did a lot of things in paintball that normal people, even the professionals, weren't doing. And one of those things was I trained at a facility where Olympians would train and where college athletes that wanted to be professional athletes would train. And so I did things, the old saying, successful people do what unsuccessful people are not willing to do. And so my dad, being a successful entrepreneur himself, was able to instill great parts of wisdom into me. And one of those was learn from the best if you want to be the best. And so I did that in paintball. It worked out great. In 3 to 4 years, I became one of the best in the world. And now I'm really taking a lot of those principles and the mindset that it took for me to be the best in the world in that specific area. And now I'm carrying that over into the entrepreneurial world, which is where I'm at today. And again, like I said, Tony Robbins was one of the guys that really got me fired up and hungry inside with the belief that I could do anything kind of in any area of my life. Not just, I already knew I could do anything because I did it in paintball, but he got me to believe, wow, you can do anything in every area of your life. You can achieve peak performance in all the areas of your life if you just know the patterns to model and the proven process for achieving the results you want in your life. And so I became addicted to studying people like Tony Robbins and that material that really gave you proven, I guess you could say, a proven formula, the proven patterns to model, as I call it, to achieve better health, better fitness, a better mindset, better emotional fitness, better relationships, better communication, how to feel better throughout the day, how to achieve anything in life, financial security, lots of money, whatever it wanted to be. When you understand the formula for achieving anything in life, it becomes simple. And so I've really become addicted to figuring out all the patterns to model, whether it be a successful business model, a successful relationship, successful anything. My passion now is studying everything I can get my hands on to be able to not only better myself, but as I've gotten to where I am now with my company, when I started it and wrote my first book, was all about, wow, I started studying this stuff because it was about me and what I could do for my own life. And then I realized, as I was writing a book, and wow, this is no longer about me. I want to do this for a living. I want to share my message with the world. And then the niche aspect of it, which is my company now, the Peak Performance Club, is going after the young adults and the young entrepreneurs who, mainly the young adult aspect, at least for personal development, they're not being targeted. There is no Tony Robbins or top level guy like that who's dominating or really even targeting the young adult space, people in high school, undergraduates between 16 and 28. And so that's what I saw an opening for is, wow, I've read over 250 books. I've been to so many events and seminars and DVDs. I've invested $500,000 in my self-education
Right.
outside of my college education. And so I realized, hey, I kind of want to be that guy for the young adult space. I want to be, if you want to call it, the Tony Robbins for the young adult space all over the world. And so that's essentially what I'm doing now is I'm creating products, I'm coaching, consulting, doing events and seminars, and I've got some really cool things happening this year with appearances on national TV networks and stuff coming up. And so it's going to be great. It's an exciting ride, and just trying to make an impact on the world for,
Wow,
my
this is a
peers.
perfect summary of what you've done. And Mark, I think one of the things that kind of drew me to want you to come on the show is when I read about how much money you invested in personal development. Money from your family's money. That how old are you now?
I just turned 24.
You just turned 24, and you've been doing this since you were in your late teens. And most people, they think about like, want to go to the beach. I want to buy my first car. I want to spend money on going to the movies. And here's a kid who was investing money in courses, in books, in meeting people all over the country, and was very focused on exactly what you wanted to learn, which from each one of these people, from John Assara, from Brian Tracy, all these guys. They have very specific teachings, and you took something from each one of them, and then you were able to write this book. This is what I'm holding right now. It's your first book, Shorten the Gap, which to me is a very concise summary of a lot of the things that people need to understand. Now, you mentioned a point about you want to be the coach, the leader for these young adults, and I think the reason why there is no somebody like that is because I think the market, a lot of young people right now, they want to focus on immediate gratification. They want to go to they want to have fun. They defer the future. In your case, you took your future in your own hands, and so why don't you tell me briefly what made you do that? Well, I mean, instead of just taking the easier, I mean, you're coming from a well-off family, you didn't have to do it.
Yeah, and that's a great point that you bring up, because that's something that I've really noticed as I began my journey, and with the utmost respect and humility I can have towards the gentlemen that have been like Tony Robbins and John Asseroff and a lot of the other guys in the industry, to say the least. I would say 8 out of 10 of them, and they've come from what we could say is the lower class, or they've come from struggles, they've come from pain, they've come from nothing, you could say, and they've achieved so much in life. And that's takes so much discipline and such a different mindset to be able to do what they've done. But as I began to study psychology and what motivates people, is I realized that there's a reason why 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 of these guys came from nothing and now have so much, is because pain motivates change. And people that are in pain are much, much, much more motivated to want to break away from the pain, to have new things. And so for me, what I've realized as I began to study lots and lots of this is I've been able to connect the dots about why people do what they do, from their thoughts to their behaviors to everything. And so what I really realized is that if we want to call it the middle class, the comfortable people, like you said, I didn't have to do any of this. I could have just stayed normal and done the normal things people my age do. And so I realized, wow, that's who I need to go after. Is I need to go after the people that have money. They go to college, they spend tens of thousands, in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars for their college education. And now the scary stat is, more young adults today, college graduates, are moving in with their parents than ever before in history. And so it's a scary stat, and it's one of the other reasons why I'm so driven to get more products out there, to get myself out there more, to spread my message and educate these young adults on the tools that I've educated myself on, that I know work, based on studying them, applying them, and perfecting them. And so, to bring it back together, what's really gotten me hungry is to help make a big difference in all of the education of the people that are in college right now. I hate seeing these kids spend their time and their money in college to come out, not be able to get a job. 55% of college graduates are either underemployed or unemployed. And with a stat like that, it's like, how is over 50% of the kids coming out of the college education system
Right.
not getting a job or getting a job that didn't require a degree? And to me, that's disgusting. And so for a fraction of the cost, I'm creating products and services and seminars and events and coaching themselves. And so that's one of the things. Reiterate your question so that I can make sure I tie it back in, because you were talking about.
Well, I think that I think you brought it back to the point where we talked about why you even need to do it,
Yeah.
especially enjoy your youth and just kind of let time do its thing. But I think what you're saying is that if you're not going to take control early enough, then you're going to be in your 30s living with your parents.
Yeah.
So, and our audience, are young professionals and attorneys and people who are, coming back to start their law firms, whether they're young or not. And I think the state of mind that you're describing is the same for everybody, because the point is, when you start something new, you graduate, let's say you graduate from college, then you go to law school, you graduate, you have that degree in your hands, and then what? You can't find a job. I think the state of mind of going through the points in that book is important to nail down every point. So I think, one of the things you talk about in the beginning is how to be successful. And to answer that question, and I'm going to ask you that in a second, but what is success? How do you define success?
Yeah, that's something that's a an amazing question that I always ask all my clients before I start coaching them on what success
Right.
is how do you define success? And I explain it in the book, and how I define success is freedom is one word to describe it, but to elaborate, it's being able to do what I want to do, when I want to do it, with who I want to do it, how I want to do it, and why I want to do it. And so to me that's the definition of freedom in its essence, is I can do anything I want, whenever I want, with whoever I want, whyever I want. And so for me, that's how I define success. It's not just achieving things, but it's getting to a point where I've achieved absolute freedom. And I think that I'm actually in a point now where, we should never have absolute freedom, but I think I'm at a point now where I've got freedom already at 24 with my own business. If I don't want to work, I don't have to work, but I'm driven and I'm hungry to want to make a difference. And so I'll put in 14, 16-hour days, Monday through Sunday, to really make it happen. I don't count the hours on the clock. It's not work when you love it. And so I think I've gotten to a point in my life where, I'm not doing anything I majored in business and marketing, but that is shadowed by the $500,000 I've invested in studying and learning from the best guys in the world. And so, that's a little bit of what I wanted to put into the book in regards to how to be successful. Is they don't teach that in school. They just teach
Right.
you how to become an employee and go out and be a robot or a sheep. And so I wanted to teach people the condensed version of, what I believe attributes to success and happiness and fulfillment in life, in a very quick, condensed version. Like we were saying, my generation is all about instant gratification, and I know that.
Right.
And I wrote a book solely around the premise of being able to get instant gratification. So there's 37 chapters in my book, and I want people to be able to say, wow, I want to know more about this. It wasn't I'm going to try to teach you everything at once. It's let me
Right.
teach you a bunch of little things, like an appetizer, a little bit of everything. So
Right.
then you go, wow, I want to know more about that. I wanted to get my generation hungry for more education.
And I think that, and I think you mentioned in the book, is you cannot really reach success unless you understand why you want to get there. And I think Simon Sinek in his "Start with a Why" movement
Yeah.
in the book. This was actually one of the most disruptive books and concepts out there, because if you don't understand why you're doing what you're doing, you're always going to be beating around the bush. You're never going to get anywhere. And you mentioned it as well. You really have to set why am I an attorney? Why am I a doctor? Why I am in real estate?
Yeah.
And then from there, you set that particular end result, right?
Yeah.
But what do you think is the key sauce to success? And I think you mentioned in the beginning of the show, do what others aren't doing.
Yeah.
But how do you do it? How do you know
Probably,
what others in your industry, for example?
um, I think there's an all-encompassing rule for success, and that is constant and never-ending improvement.
Right.
It's it's an old Japanese saying, it's constant. It translated into the English, which is just constant and never-ending improvement. And I think that that's been something that has really been the light at the end of the tunnel for me. Is nothing else matters in between as long as I'm consistently improving. There's no failure, there's only results.
Right.
And so I'm always improving my results in my relationships, I mean, the list can go on. My physical,
Sure.
mental, emotional, spiritual, and financial aspect of my life, I'm always finding little ways to improve it. And I think that's the difference. Is I think so many people in life, you know, they spend all their time and energy focused on work and making money,
Right.
or their relationship and not work, or their health and their fitness and their relationship but not work, or all these variations, too much time with their kids, not enough time at work, or not enough
Sure.
time with their wife, or not enough time enjoying their life with free time and travel. And so tunnel visioned on one specific area. And I think, to me, success in life is really all about growth and contribution, and how those relate to constant and never-ending improvement in every area of your life. I think if you can find ways to always make tiny improvements, like Darren Hardy talks about in the compound effect, if you can find ways to compound little tiny improvements in every area of your life, where are you going to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? I always ask my clients, do you plan on living, and my clients are young, so it's a silly question to ask, do you
Right.
plan on living 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 more years? Of course, I hope. And if I do, how much is just a little improvement in all these areas of your life? Where is that going to be? Where is that going to compound in 5 years, 10 years, 15? I think people make this vision of, oh, well, if I wanted my body like that, or to have amazing relationships and even know how to do that, or how to communicate and influence people to get my way more often, or how to make all the money I've ever wanted to have what I want, they have to realize they have to be scary thought, because that means change, and most people aren't ready for change. But if you just understand that it's not this big scary thing out in the future that you're going to have and you have to do a
Right.
lot of change, you just make consistent little improvements in the change. And to me, that's been the guiding principle for me. And I think, the biggest reason, one of the biggest reasons why I've been able to achieve the success I have, and while I'll continue to achieve the success I have, is because I'm always looking for ways to improve.
Right. And give an example. I mean, in a way, when I'm reading this, I'm like, well, I think I'm following a similar pattern because, we use a lot of our marketing and education on Facebook for attorneys. We're one of the few who do that. And when I started doing it a few years back, nobody was doing it. I was like, well, if nobody's on Facebook, maybe there's something out there. Let's try it. And
Mm.
so it's always the constant search for something different that
Yeah.
really makes you more motivated, but also creates an energy where you have to succeed. So if somebody, for our listeners, if things don't work and you follow the herd, just do something different and try it. It may work.
Yeah.
I tell me about the perceptions and associations concept in your book, because this is something that is difficult for people to accept it. What did you mean
Yeah.
by that concept?
So
Uh,
yeah, we'll go
uh,
on.
you mentioned something like our behavior determines the results, our results.
Yeah. So, in regards to that, perceptions and associations, I like to say, who wouldn't want to have their life be a masterpiece, or who wouldn't want to have absolute control over their destiny, regardless of what your beliefs are? At the
Right.
end of the day, we make decisions and it guides our results, and our results determine our destiny. But before we make a decision, what guides that? And what guides that is reverse engineering. You want to control your destiny. Well, what's the first thing that plays a role in controlling your destiny? And that has to do with a few things. And one of those is our conditioning of what we believe will allow us to avoid pain or gain pleasure, or a combination of the two. And based around that, we have these beliefs or perceptions and associations of what we think will allow us to avoid pain or gain pleasure. And these are, for the most part, unconsciously conditioned into our brain. For example, if a child grows up and sees their parents always fighting, then at an unconscious level, they're going to, or at a conscious level, they're going to believe as they grow up that there's maybe no such thing as true love. Or we look at the divorce rate now in
Sure.
California. I just looked at a stat last night. I was talking to somebody about it, and the divorce rate in California is over 75%, and it's over 65% in the United States. So I think there's a very common theme that we get. Our associations or our perceptions of marriage these days is that it's not that big of a deal to get a divorce. And so that alone is going to be a guiding principle in your life, that if you believe your association or perception of a marriage is, well, it doesn't really matter to get divorced, rather than back in the day it was, you don't get divorced, you make it work. And there's a million ways that you can do this. Somebody who, has the association that eating healthy and working out is going to cause them short-term pain. They're never going to get the long-term pleasure of being healthy, looking good, feeling good, and producing better results in their life. And that all comes down to what you associate pain and pleasure to and what I associate pain and pleasure to, which is just another way of saying our perceptions or our associations. The difference, I always say, the difference between somebody who goes to the gym 5 days a week and the difference between someone who struggles to go to the gym ever is that one person associates massive amounts of pleasure to going to the gym and massive amounts of pain to not going to the gym. The person who struggles to go to the gym is associating pain at some level to pushing through the short-term wall of pain, a 30 to 60 minute workout, but they're not willing to get off the couch to go and do a 30 to 60 minute pain, we can call it, workout, to then be able to thrive off of all the pleasure. Another example is what drives me is I'll spend some days 8 hours a day of self-studying from all the different things online, like audio and DVD and books, because I'm associating massive amounts of pleasure to that. Back in the day, if you would have asked me 6, 7, 8 years ago, I would have been like, reading? No, reading is what you do in school, and I don't like that. That's pain. Or reading for pleasure? No. Now I'm addicted to it because I've changed my association or my perception of what reading does. I've changed my association or my perception of what working out is. And so I've created a different perception or a different model of the world for myself. And that model of the world is I can have everything in life. I just have to believe it and create associations of things that will bring me pain and pleasure. I believe that I can have anything I want in life, but with that belief, I have to take certain actions, and those actions are constant and never-ending improvement. And so just by changing how you perceive things and associate things, that's going to determine how you feel, where you put your focus, and ultimately the decisions you make in life, and that's ultimately going to determine your destiny.
No, this is great advice, and I think one of the things that I took from that particular point is that you mentioned that people always remember how you made them feel, and especially for us, we are professionals, we deal with clients, we deal with colleagues. It doesn't really matter what you say, but the way you act and make people feel, they're gonna remember it for forever, and then that's gonna be your image. So we always have to think about it before we say anything, before we act in a particular way, because that's going to leave a particular impact on that person, and who knows what he's going to do with it, right? Because as you build your reputation, you want to also act in a particular way. So I think that kind of all ties in together, because how do you perceive yourself, you'll perceive other people as well.
Yeah.
For our listeners, they don't, well, the people who don't see the video, but there's a bunch of notes behind you and lists and very organized board. And one of the points in your book is, which I liked, is the making to-do lists and versus outcomes. And for us, we always have to do. I mean, I have to-do lists from morning to evening. I have to meet people. I have to go to court. I have to send my newsletter. And you said that to-do lists are in a way limiting because they basically they constrain you. Why don't you tell me about your philosophy and how you handle, and what did you mean by that point in the book?
Yeah, I learned at a young age that to-do lists are a great thing because they allow you to kind of put it all on paper, which is huge. You don't let it all run around your head. You put it on paper, you get organized, you prioritize it, fantastic. The problem with most people is they don't understand the reason why they made a to-do list. And the reason they made a to-do list is to achieve certain outcomes or results. And all you really have to understand is that the main goal of the to-do list is to achieve those results or outcomes. And if you haven't actually defined the results or the outcomes, you're just following the to-do list almost blindly. And I use examples in the book that one of them was at a soft-served yogurt place. And I use that example because it really did happen, and it kind of blew my mind and really set in the fact that the to-do list thing, and that's why I had to write about it, is this girl was given a to-do list, which is one of the things on the to-do list was you do not give change, or we're going to let a penny slide, or we're going to let 2 pennies slide for this bill because the guy had to break a 20. And it was like no, sir, I'm sorry, I can't let the 2 pennies slide. And he's like, you're going to make me break a 20 to give you 2 pennies or something like that. And, and she didn't say it like this, but she goes, I'm sorry, I have to follow my to-do list, which said, do not give anybody even a penny as a break. And
Right.
so, I mean, if I had a penny, I for sure would have spotted the guy, but I was paying with a card. And so it was just really mind-blowing because I was like, the outcome, I guarantee the CEO or the manager, the outcome they want is for happy customers.
Right.
That girl, and of course, they probably made a rule because people are stupid and they go, well, if they said, let it slide, when do I break? 5 cents, 10 cents, 20 cents? And so she was following a to-do list. She just lost 2 people and maybe more because it was a husband and wife. Maybe I'm a guarantee he's going to go tell people at least that day when he was upset, I'm never going to that place again
Right.
because they just ruined the experience for me. And so to-do lists, I think, can be very dangerous. And you can probably see it all around you, people following to-do lists that they can't another example I use in the book actually is, when people check your IDs, like,
Right.
if you're like 80 years old and they're like, I'm sorry, sir, your ID is expired. Or I'm sorry, sir, you don't have your ID on you. We can't let you in. Our to-do list states you must check every ID. Some places say if they don't look over 35, if they look over 35, you can do it. Some don't, though. Some actually say you
Right.
must check safe. And so I've literally seen this happen, not only from my parents, but I've literally seen old people get turned down because they didn't have their IDs on them. Why would you need an ID if you're 80? No one's going to ask you for that. I've actually seen old people get turned down because they didn't have their ID. And that's so stupid because the business lost money, and they probably lost the customer lifetime value of that person, and maybe even word of mouth through other customers. And
Right.
so there's a lot of examples as to why I think to-do lists can be dangerous, but tying it into how people would follow to-do lists in their day-to-day life is, I always think, write it to day, but also prioritize this in what order you need to get done, but define the outcome. Define the outcome of whatever your to-do list is for the day, for one specific thing. Figure out the outcome. Maybe the way that you wrote down how to accomplish it isn't the best way to do it, and you can change. I always, heard my mentor say, pick the target, never change the target, but you can change the approach to hitting the target. And that's kind of like the to-do list metaphor here is, figure out what the outcome or the result is that you want, the bullseye, and then you can change the approach. You can change the list of ways to accomplish that outcome or result, but you never change the actual result that you're going for. You just change your approach. And so to-do lists are great. Just make the distinction between the to-do list and then the actual goal of the to-do list, which is to achieve the result or the outcome which you want.
Right. Exactly. So I think a to-do list can help you focus, but if it becomes if it becomes a burden, then it's not helpful. So kind of
Yeah,
use it as a guide. And
exactly.
I think in your case, I can see some of the stuff in the back here. It looks pretty impressive. You know, another interesting point is, and to me is something that really defines the way we do business, is focus and the lack of. I mean, focus is huge because if you're not focused, if you're not, if you don't have, if you don't have an approach, whether it's positive or you have negativity, then you're completely out there. So how do you define the power of focus, and what do you mean by that?
So, hands down, focus is definitely going to be one of the most important aspects. I remember I was talking about it just earlier on our call, which was, one of the first aspects in controlling your destiny, if you go all the way back to here, is what's going to determine how you behave is your focus. Because your focus, wherever you put your focus, is going to determine how you're going to feel. If I started asking you questions about some horrible thing I knew that happened from your past, what's going to happen? Your physiology is going to change, and your biochemistry or your emotional
Right.
state is going to change. All we did was change your focus. We put your focus on something that has emotional anchors or attachments to it. In this case, a horrible trauma from the past. So by changing your focus, we've now changed your emotional state. Therefore, the rest of your day, or at least while you're feeling that emotion, is going to probably be a little different than if I put your focus on something empowering, something motivating from your past that was exciting or funny, maybe something in the future that's going to happen, maybe something today that's going to happen. Wherever we put your focus is going to determine how you're going to feel, and how you're going to feel is going to determine how you think and behave, and ultimately the results and outcomes you get in life. And so I think I call it inner size, and there's exercise for your body, and there's inner size for your mind. And it's kind of a new thing, mindfulness and exercise. But I think when you practice focusing, like you practice contracting a muscle, you practice focusing, which could be through meditation, it could be through reading, and a lot of people can sit down and read a book because they're focused, their brain's wandering, or whatever it may be. And so I think people need to practice focusing more often, because the power of your focus is truly going to be one of the most influential things in how you're going to feel. And as I said, how you're going to feel is going to determine how you behave, and how you behave is going to determine the results and outcomes you get, which ultimately determines your destiny. But it all starts with your focus. And so where you put your focus will determine how you're going to feel. And so learn to control your focus more often, put it on powerful, motivating, inspiring, and empowering things. You can do incantations or affirmations, which is just reinforcing positive beliefs. I have actually a board here that my company and I go over every day of positive affirmations for our company. And so it just controls your focus. All day our focus is getting pulled in different directions. Control your focus, and then you'll control ultimately the results you start getting in life a lot better.
Yeah, and I think this is a very powerful advice, because we often forget about this. We just we get sucked in our day activities, and we never take time to reaffirm what we our support for ourselves. And I interviewed a James Altucher, and he has a book called Choose Yourself, and that's kind of the whole motto of the book. You really have to choose yourself. You have to focus on you. Once you feel good with yourself, everything else will be will fall into place. If you feel down, if you feel useless, how can you help others, right?
Yeah.
So I think this should be the first part of the book.
Yeah.
You should start from there, right?
Yeah.
Mark, I liked some of the tricks you mentioned in the book about affirmation to build confidence. I mean, if you don't have confidence, how can you be a powerful guide? If you're an attorney, I mean, our listeners many of them are lawyers, doctors, professionals. Confidence is why people come to us to get advice. But we're human beings. We not always feel confident. Sometimes we have bad days. Sometimes we are just our nature. And why don't you share with us some of those little tricks that you wrote in the book about getting more confident?
Yeah, confidence. Yeah, I mean, you're spot on. Confidence is going to be, again, one of those things that's really going to determine, again, your emotional state. And
Right.
again, your emotional state is going to determine your results, and so on and so forth. This is a common theme that, again, keeps coming up in this interview, and it's a common theme that comes up in our life. And this is
Right.
why, no matter what we say, focus, confidence, well, guess what? It all comes at the beginning of how you're going to feel, and then the results you're going to produce. And so one of the things that I always make the distinction about for my clients or anyone I speak with about confidence in this specific case is there's two types of confidence. There's self-confidence, and there's preparation confidence. And so preparation confidence is confidence that's derived from one's ability to prepare themselves for a task that needs to be done. So if I'm going to present in front of a large audience and say it's a 60-minute presentation, and I had to just go up on stage, well, I'm self-confident no matter what. That's not going to be lowered at all. My self-confidence will be equally as high if I was prepared or not, because they're two different things. But my preparation confidence would be low because I know that I didn't prepare. Now, in the other instance, my self-confidence is always high. My preparation confidence would be high as well if I had prepared to a certain degree. And so if I have preparation confidence and self-confidence, I'm going to be that much more dominant on stage. And I think that a lot of people don't know the distinction between the two types of confidence.
Right.
And that alone makes a big difference, because you go, I'm not confident. No, shut up. You are confident as an individual, maybe,
Right.
but you're not prepared for the situation. And that's why you don't feel confident. And I think a lot of the times, as long as you have self-confidence, you're going to be great. You're going to be fine in life. Preparation confidence comes from skill. That comes from preparing on a specific craft. So I would not have preparation confidence had I had to go to, NASA right now and become an astronaut or do some crazy drill, because I'm not prepared. My self-confidence would say, hey, I'm a smart guy, I'm intelligent, we can figure this out. But my preparation confidence is saying, hey, we're not prepared at all. So understanding that is a big distinction, because I think a lot of people will beat themselves up and say, oh, you're not good enough, whatever it may be, any form of self-sabotage or limiting belief or self-doubt. But you have to make the distinction. Am I beating myself up because I'm not prepared and that's why I don't feel confident? Or am I beating myself up because I'm actually beating myself up saying, you're not good enough, you're not worthy enough, whatever it may be. And so self-confidence is going to be one of the most important. Anyone can do preparation confidence. Self-confidence is usually the difficult one, and that's what I usually have to work with my clients on a lot, is self-confidence. And one of the easiest ways to work on self-confidence, first of all, is to understand what are your beliefs about yourself that are causing you to have limiting beliefs or a lack of confidence or a lack of, what you're capable of achieving. Right. And so, first of all, if you have a belief that you're lacking confidence or you have a limiting belief in an area of your life, well, you have to understand what is a belief. And a belief is simply, an analogy I'll use is, a belief is the top of a table. And that is the belief. How is the belief supported? By legs. And those legs are references. And so in order to support a belief, we have references. And so people will look into their past and say, well, I don't think I'm worthy enough here because I've got 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 100 references that I'm focusing on in the past that said, my parents told me I wasn't enough. My parents told me I would never accomplish anything. My teachers told me I'm a loser or I'm a bad student. My friends call me stupid. I got picked on in school. Whatever it may be. There's a million references we could all look back. I mean, right now, could you and I each not look back on our past and find references that would validate that you and I are both
absolutely
incompetent or unsuccessful or not? There's no reason for us to have confidence in ourselves. Easily, anybody could look into their past and find references that would support that belief. So what's different and what makes a quick distinction for a lot of people that lack self-confidence is just look into your past and focus on a couple references that support the fact that you are worthy enough, you are an intelligent, worthy, capable person of achieving anything you want. You just have to focus on references that support the belief that you have confidence. So a belief is just a level of certainty in something. And so if you find references that support a belief, that'll give you certainty in yourself, and that alone will validate and support your own self-confidence. Another thing that you can do, that's questioning why you have a lack of self-confidence and then understanding it, which is a big distinction to make. And then another one, just summarizing it, is in the morning, your brain is your subconscious mind, which is the most powerful driving thing, determining where you are in life and how you feel and pushing things into your conscious mind, is in the first 20 minutes of every morning of waking up, your subconscious mind is most impressionable. And so what I do is I condition my brain and my mindset with the beliefs and thought patterns that I want to condition myself to pull me in the direction of, the values and the higher goals and achievement that I want to have in life. For instance, I'll wake up in the morning, I'll read a future-paced story of my life, 5 to 10 years of exactly the way I want it, as if it's already happening. Then I read a couple powerful quotes that, lift me up. And then I go through an affirmation list I have of uplifting things. I am worthy enough. I'm a great speaker. Today's going to be an amazing day because I'm going to make it so, and so on and so forth. I'll go through a list of affirmations I have. And so I condition myself every single day with those beliefs. And I always tell people, I know, Mark, this sounds kind of stupid and silly. Oh, that's not going to work. Well, guess what? If you woke up every single day, looked in the mirror and said, you're an idiot, you're stupid, you can't do anything, today's going to suck, and a bunch of other negative things, how do you think you would feel? How do you think you'd be starting your day off? How do you think that would go and paint the picture for the rest of your day? It would suck, right?
Right.
And so when I use that reference of it, they go, oh, well, I guess I could see how if I sabotage myself, it would make a difference. Well, guess what? It has the opposite effect when you condition yourself with positive affirmations on a consistent basis.
I love that. That's great advice. I mean, what we have without confidence, everything that we do revolves around, reaching out to new clients, getting referrals, giving advice to our clients, dealing with colleagues. If you don't have that level of confidence, I'm talking about the self-confidence, which is to me is the foundation you can prepare. We are not able to do our jobs, and we're not happy. So this is great. I'm very, we're gonna make it a tweetable quote. And Mark, as we come to the end of our show, why don't you share with our listeners one of your favorite quotes and tell me why you like that quote? So
obviously, I have so many quotes in my book, and those are a lot of ones that correlate to the chapters, and they're great quotes because a lot of people that have read the book, they tell me, I love the fact that you put great quotes in it related to the chapter, because then I can read the quote and it kind of re-sparks the chapter in my mind.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why I did it. And so it's difficult for me to pick one specific quote that I love since I know so many. and I have so many great mentors. But if I had to pick one, it would probably be Jim Rohn's quote, which is, until the pain of remaining the same, until the pain of change is greater, until the pain of change is greater than the pain of remaining the same, we will remain. And I'm messing it up. You got me all tongue twisted here, but it has to do with changing causes pain, and so until the pain of remaining the same is greater than the pain of change, we will remain the same. And so back to what I was talking about earlier, which is how pain is a driving, motivating factor in everything that we do. And I think that quote is so great because it really drives home the fact that if you're in pain, like we talked about, you're going to change. But most people are comfortable. Most people are very comfortable. I don't need to make more money. I don't need to better my relationships. My health's not very, my health is fine. Everything in my life is pretty good. I'd rank it a 6 or a 7 or an 8 out of 10. Why not make it a 9 or a 10? And the problem is, if you're at a 6 or a 7 or an 8, you're not motivated to get to the 9 or the 10. At least most people are not. Right. And so that's why, they say, the middle class is the middle class, the rich stay rich, and the poor stay poor. But actually the belief that I have is that a lot of self-made millionaires or billionaires have come from nothing. They didn't come from the middle class. They came from nothing. And that ties back into that quote, which is pain will cause change. And the middle class is not in pain. Right. Therefore, they're not going to change. And that's one of the big things that I bring to my demographic is I want to cause them to realize the pain that they're actually in, which is you've been dealt great cards and you're selfishly not leveraging that to your fullest capability. I have a level of responsibility that I've taken on myself, which is I was dealt great cards, and I have a responsibility not only to myself and to my family and to the people I care about, but to the world. I feel I have a level of responsibility, which is I've been dealt good cards, and I'm going to do the best that I can possibly do with those to help the world. Excellent. And so that's why I love that quote.
That's very powerful, and we'll put that quote in the show notes so people can see it and find it. And finally, is there any book that you feel is impacted you, or you want to recommend that you're reading now, you read before? That'll be great.
Actually, a book that I'm reading for I've read it many times, and it's around 600 pages. Mm-hmm. I'm reading it again right now because it's so good, is Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned earlier, Tony was one of the guys that really kind of, I guess you could say, got the fire inside my belly. He's one of the guys that really got me hungry for personal development and wanting to better myself and make a difference in the world. And so Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins is one of many great books that I could recommend.
Very good. Thanks for that, Mark. And for our audience that want to find you online, why don't you verbally state your website or any other place you want us to find you?
Yeah, great. So people can go to thepeakperformanceclub.com. That's thepeakperformanceclub.com. And you can also follow me on social media. We are on Twitter, we're the real PPC. Yeah, the real _PPC. And then on Facebook, it's facebook.com/MarkLack777.
Perfect. And again, we'll have all the links in our show notes. Thank you so much, Mark, for coming on the show. This was amazing, and we'll have a lot of action items on the show notes. And this is Jacob Sapochnik, enchantinglawyer.com, the podcast. We welcome your comments. If you have any questions about the show, any of the action items we had, please email us. We'd love to hear from you. And we'll see you at our next episode. Thank you so much, and have an amazing day.